this video we'll learn how to create this web button look with a few lightings here. This is a completed version we'll be going to create. So let's minimize this and create a new document. For this we'll use 800 pixels of width and 740 pixels of height. As you know, there are many ways of creating shapes. Let's create a new layer, and there is a first way we use is the elliptical marquee tool for creating ovals or rectangular shapes, and then fill it with a color you'd like. And another way is using the shape tools here. The best way I use to create an oval is the brush tool, which would give me a perfect shape. For this tutorial I will use a size of 379 diameter pixels, and make sure your hardness is completely full, which is 100%. Once you have done that, with the new layer selected, make sure you have your foreground color to white. Just click once on your screen. Once you have done that, select the selection tool, and we'll align this by pressing Ctrl A to select the whole document here, and using these alignments, click on the horizontal align and the vertical so that you align this in center. Press Ctrl D to deselect it. Once you have done that, let's rename this layer to outer button. Basically we'll be creating 3 different layers of the same circle in different sizes to make that type of effect. So let's duplicate this layer by pressing the shortcut key Ctrl J, or you could right click and select the duplicate layer here. Once you have done that, let's rename this to inner shade. After that's done, press Ctrl T, which is the shortcut key for the transform, free transform, or you could get it from edit free transform, which is, as I said, Ctrl T for the shortcut. Once you have selected that, click on this anchor, this chain type here, which helps us to change the width and the height together. By pressing that, make the width to about 82% and press the checkbox. You can't see it because both of them are same color, so let's add the effect on the outer button. So select the outer button layer and open your blending options. We'll start by adding some inner shadow. Leave the blending mode to multiply black color and reduce the opacity to about 30%. Let's keep the distance, say need a less distance, so about 2 is good. We'll change the size to about 10 pixels and change the contour to this one here, the sawtooth, and never mind with the noise, let it be default. Now we'll need to add some color for this outer button, so gradient overlay is the best way to add some neat color, and we'll change the gradient to, I've already got some created here. I'll be using this gray, which you can take the color is 85 3 times, which goes to white. Once you have done that, let the angle be up to 90%, scale 100, never mind, let them all be default. Press on the OK button. Once you have that done, using your Alt key, there are 2 ways of adding the same blending options to another layer if you'd like. One way is by right clicking and copying the layer style, and then right clicking and pasting the layer style. That's one way. The second way is bring your arrow straight above the effects icon here, hold your Alt key and drag it straight. You would see that it's copying the effects, that is the blending options, to the above layer. Once you release, you have the same effect on this layer also. So we'll make some changes by double clicking here and we'll not be using the inner shadow. And on the gradient overlay, let's reverse this to give the white the opposite side of this color. There's nothing else will be changing. Press on OK. Let's duplicate this layer. As I said, we'll be using it 3 different sizes. Let's duplicate this outer button another time, and we'll call this blue, which is going to be the inner button look, the main look of this button. Once you have done that, let's drag this straight up, and we'll clear up the styles by right clicking and clicking on clear layer style. Once you have done that, we'll select the transform tool, the shortcut key again, Ctrl T, and click on this, which helps you again to change both at once, and we'll reduce the width and height of about 80% so that we have the inner shade just a little bit of 2 pixels. As you know, we changed the inner shade to 82%, which will give us a thin look once we made the blue to 80%. Press on the checkbox so that you see why we reversed the gradient here. It gives you a light look. Now we'll be changing the inner glow here, the inner gradient of this color now to blue, so you'd basically exactly see the white glow down of that inner shade gradient. Let's go back to the blending settings of this blue, and we'll first go to gradient overlay. We'll use color of this dark blue to light blue. Note the colors, which is 002A5D for the dark, and for the light it's 004A8F. Once you have added that to your gradient, make sure you save all these gradients, which would help you in future to create new things. Once you've done that, you could see the white of this gradient here, which is 2 pixels in width. Once that's done, let's leave the remaining things to default, and we'll press this OK. We have our main button here look now, so let's create a new layer and call this shine 1. After that's done, control click on your outer button. We don't want the inner button or the inner shade, we want the whole selection of this button, so control click on the outer button so that you have the whole look. We're going to give a shine straight on top here so that it comes up even above the gradient. Using a pen tool, we want to cut the bottom part of this selection, so I'll be using the pen tool for this. Make sure your paths are selected, click and drag it right inwards. Once you've done that, let's drag in somewhere around here, and holding your Alt key, click on the last point you created here so that we don't get any turns. It doesn't really matter since you are not going into this selection, we just needed that curve over here. So let's just end up, make sure you are not in the selection. Hold on your Alt key and click here, and make sure the circle appears near the pen tool so that you reach on the end point. Right click after you have created that path, make sure you have this curve, which is main that we need. We don't really need the outer part. And then after you have done that, right click and select make selection. Here we'll have a couple of options in this dialog box. Make the feather 0 pixels, and the main thing here is that we subtract it from the selection we already have in the back. Means it subtracts this part and leaves the top part here. So once you press OK, you see that it's cut off all the other part and left this top part here. Make sure you're in the shine 1 layer and your foreground is white. Alt backspace is to fill in your foreground, and the shortcut key to fill in your background is Control backspace. So let's press Alt backspace to fill in the white, or you could use your paint bucket tool to fill in. Once you've done that, Control D to deselect, and with this shine layer on, let's make the opacity to about, let's move down, let's make it around somewhere around here, 15 is good, and we'll change the blend mode, never mind, let the blend mode be to normal. After you have done that, let's create another new layer and rename it to shine 2, and using the pen tool we'll be creating few shines on the sides of this button, which makes it look completely different. So let's zoom in on any of the corners here. For example, we'll create one over here using the pen tool again, P for the shortcut. Make sure your paths is selected and you have white for your foreground. Click and drag straight to the path of this, and then at this point let's click and drag it downwards so we get this bend. Alt click on this point, on the end point we just created, so that it doesn't make a curve. Since you drag this, if you would click right here, you would get this bend, which we don't really want. We want a moon type shape. So Alt click once on this so it cuts off the next curve here, and again Alt click here and hold on your Alt key and straight drag it upwards so you get this shape here. And once you've done that, right click, fill the path with your foreground color. Make sure you have foreground selected and no feather. Press on OK. Once you have that done, hit on escape. You have this, you can have a look how it looks. It gives you a shine look. Let's add some more on this side using a pen tool again. Click and drag. Make sure you're on the same layer since we're not adding any effects or blending options to this. Let's create another one. Alt click, holding your Alt key again at the end point, click and drag it this way. This is enough. Okay, let's fill this again by right clicking and filling the path to foreground, which is white, and let's delete that. We'll create another one over here. If you saw my art tutorial, you would see that I create 2 shades at one drawing of this pen tool. Let's create that by dragging this straight in here, and then using your Alt key again, drag in this point, which makes 2 sections. You can see here, which is one over here and the other one here, which crosses the path. This helps us to get 2 different, but it's definitely close to each other. Let's right click and fill that and have a look how it looks. Same with the foreground color. Zooming back a bit. Let's remove the path there. You could see that different kind of shine. Let's, with this list selected, having a selection tool, move tool selected, let's move this a bit to the right and down. Just position this a bit. Let's zoom back here. You could see that effect, which looks really neat. Once you have done that, let's create another layer and we'll call this light, as we had 3 lights near these 3 different shines. Using our brush tool, we'll be creating our light, obviously not that big. Let's reduce this one to for about something which is a little bit bigger more. This is good. Okay, once this is done, let's reduce the hardness. Since we don't want a really sharp white color light, we would reduce the hardness completely to 0, and with your foreground to white, just add in some light here. That's not exactly how it looks. Let's change the blending mode to overlay, and we'll reduce the opacity to that's actually not really needed. Let's increase that back. It's fine. Let's add some more inwards. That's really a lot. Make sure you don't have this too bright. Let's reduce the brush tool a bit so that we can make some more in here. Oh, that's too strong. Let's make it somewhere here and reduce the flow to about 50% so that we could add some light more in here. That's already got a lot here. Okay, once that's done, you could see the lights, which is really making the button have a great look. Let's create a text in this button. Using the text tool, we'll be using Moonbeam font for this, which is a really standard web look font, and we'll be using about 80 pixels is fine. Let's type in web. Let's make that caps, and we'll be using white for this too. Using your control key, click on your outer button here to have that selection. Since we want to align this text in center, using the horizontal and the vertical, we have aligned the web text here. Control D to deselect. Once you've done that, let's make a reflection for this. We could add some blending options, some glow to this text. Let's add some glow, outer glow. Let's use white, and let's add some opacity of about 50%. Make this to overlay. Let's increase the size to about 10. Let's reduce opacity a bit more. 30 is good. We don't really want it to look a lot bright. Once you've done that, let's add a reflection for this by duplicating this layer. The shortcut key is Ctrl J. That's right. Web reflection. After you've done that, we really don't need a glow for the reflection, so right click on this layer and we'll clear up the layer style, and Ctrl T to transform of the web reflection layer. Right click and flip vertical, press enter to accept those changes, and drag it down using a shift and arrow key straight here. Let's zoom in here. And once you have done that, click on the add layer mask, which is right below this and next to the blending options. Once you have that mask selected, using the gradient tool, let's select black to white gradient and click and drag this from top to down a bit. That's perfectly exactly how we want it. Using the clicking on the text tool here on the icon here, reduce the opacity to about, say, make it really more or less 15% is good. That's great. That's done. So this is how we create a web button look, which is actually a round one with some few lightings here. You could even reduce the opacity of this light since some of the spot is really bright. Not a lot. Let's make that 80% is good. 81. Okay, that's all for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed and learned something new in this tutorial by creating some lights using different blending options. Thanks for watching.